Okay, so we're going to make this just a little working session, and if I have something if I miss, hopefully you're close enough I can see you. So, over the years when I did a class, I've taught a bunch of different things. I don't teach one single thing, haven't taught one single thing. When I originally built Note School in the early 2000s, I built Note School to teach people how to broker seller finance notes. And then I'd always done a lot showing real estate investors how to create notes. And so, how to make a note correctly and safely. So that's really what I did. And, I've just taught different things as different market conditions. I've added things, I've taken things off. We still have some level of training on non-performing notes, but it's not the same because the market's not the same. So people ask me all the time, what does Note School teach, right? So one thing is to sell property with seller financing. Let me tell you my heart for you. My heart for you is to go sell really good assets to really good borrowers and control the cost of underlying financing where you're not forced to go buy a substandard property and oversell it and oversell the interest. And that probably flies in the face of what most people think they've ever heard about seller financing. But let me tell you why I do that. I have bought 1,000 portfolios of seller finance notes. 1,000. I've probably looked at 5,000 portfolios of seller finance notes. So I know what it's like to go to Marble Falls, Texas, or I know what it's like to go to Columbia, South Carolina, or I know what it's like to go to Tempe, Arizona, and see some guy that's 70 years old, big old tough guy with a tear running down his cheek, and he says, I can't retire. What he owns is a business. He doesn't own a portfolio. So he dealt with a bunch of substandard property and substandard borrowers paying above market price and above market rent, and I'm telling you, he can't leave and go on vacation for a month because he can't keep his business propped up. And that sucks. And I ain't got no interest in teaching that. You think this cowboy ain't never been to a galvanized ghetto before? An old cheap mobile home park, it ain't, like I've been there. I will tell you that what my mission in teaching people to do this business is that you can do killer business on killer properties. You have to be really good at structuring financing. So I just have a passion for this. I believe that I can help change the business. I know what good business is. My God, Bob Repass, I sold him loans for 20 years plus. He's managed $2 billion in seller finance notes for 20 straight years. You think we don't know the analytics of how a loan will pay? Seller financed? Of course we do. So our heart is to teach you how to do seller financing. I always ask a student, why do you seller finance? And you know what the answer is? I seller finance. This is kind of essentially what they're saying. They may not say these words, but this is what they're saying. I seller finance a property to get rid of my property. What a terrible thing. I want you to seller finance your property to gain a customer for your bank for the next 25 years. Right? Your real estate business is a vehicle that now builds your bank. Now that's a portfolio. That's a real business. So I'm telling you, if you're selling substandard property to substandard buyers and you're overselling it and you're overselling the rate, you're just buying time. Done been there and done that. Now, after the loans pay and all the ones that are not going to pay, and after the loans pay, and now 8 years later, you can pick through what's left, and I've done that a bunch of times. I've scraped through a portfolio after the guy had all these problems, and now after 8 years, I can look and see the ones that are really going to pay, and I get to buy those. Well, ain't very good for the operator. It's pretty good for Eddie. It just sucks for the operator. So there's a deeper thought that I will take you to in a class. And I'm pretty successful. I had one guy that left a class in the last few months. And he was selling junk to junk people. And he was polite. I guess I just hurt his feelings. And you know what? If I did, I did. Because I told him the truth. And I'm more seasoned than he is. He said, I've been doing this about a year. I'm thinking, I bet you one day you'll be driving down the road thinking about this old guy in the note business, said he'd been doing it 40 years, telling him this stuff wouldn't model the way he thought. So here's my punchline. I want your spreadsheet and your banking account deposits to match. I met a bunch of people that can build a spreadsheet, and then their banking account deposits never match what the spreadsheet said. You own a business. If your spreadsheet matches your deposit slips, you own a portfolio. That's why I teach it. I know it's not what a lot of people say. I got all that. But you got to remember, for 40 years, I've been flying around the country looking at portfolios of notes from people that inherited, and now after the old guy finally gets so whooped up trying to run this business, he dies, then I get to go deal with his heirs. And I've made that plane trip a few hundred times, if not a few thousands. And I'm just saying, that's not what I want for you guys. I still teach defaulted notes. We taught defaulted notes heavy from about 2010 to last year or so. And we just kind of tailed off of it. I'm not saying there's not any NPLs. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying to you is that we don't have an abundant amount of really quality non-performing loans like we did for years and years and years. So if that's your thing, I'm not poo-pooing your thing. Godspeed to you. I'm just telling you the truth. It's not some deep inventory of this stuff anymore, and I'm not going to go teach something that's not a true story. I'm just not. I'm too old to do that, right? So where's the biggest inventory of non-performing notes that you can make a killing at? So Jeff Watson and I agree on this. There is a lot of people that's taken money out of their self-directed retirement account, and they decide to be a lender, although they really don't know anything about lending. And so they decided to lend money out of their self-directed retirement account. And let me ask you a question. If you're a real estate investor, do you call one of the 100 hard money lenders that are in town that'll loan you money at 10 and 2? Or do you just go find one little amateur that's going to loan you money out of his self-directed retirement account, and he's got no system or no process to get your loan funded? If you had a great killer deal, who would you borrow money from? So guess who the people that are lending money out of their retirement account kind of get to be their customers? The guys that the lenders, the professional lenders, aren't lending money to. I'm not saying that's 100% of the time, but there is a pattern to it. So if you were scraping data, you could scrape data of the beneficiary of a loan that is a self-directed retirement account that's at least a year old and the taxes are due. And I'll guarantee you, Brandon, there might be gold in them their heels. A year-old loan due to a self-directed retirement account where the taxes are due is probably a non-performing loan. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of strategies where you can buy those notes and probably buy it and them seller finance you to buy the note. Because they have a problem, and Jeff Watson will assure you they are frozen. Am I right about that, Mr. Watson? So I'm going to point you in a very lucrative direction that's not, and I don't say this on the internet because I don't want to get a bunch of junk about this. But I'm taking you right to the source of where some of the best NPLs are. Yes, there's sites, and you can go chase NPLs, and we're very good at showing people how to buy NPLs. We certainly have a lot of experience at it. But this is what I feel like a 2020 relevant way to chase NPLs. The next thing is buying reperforming notes. So there is a fairly significant inventory of loans that have been modified. Some of them are HAMP mods, some of them are just regular modified loans. The example that you saw me do with Seth early this morning is just a classic loan like this. So some mortgage company, had a bunch of violations, and so the regulators come in there and slap their hand, and they said, look, any of these loans that are delinquent, we're going to force you to do a modification. And they modified this loan, and the truth of the matter is, a third of that loan, if you remember the numbers, a third of that loan wasn't earning any interest and wasn't making any payments. You can buy that loan at a killer price. And so once you buy that loan, you can do the Ben model, the Martha model. Now there's all these different things that we're going to go show you of how to go do that. And there's still a fairly significant amount of inventory in reperforming notes. These are typically long-term, low-interest rate notes. And people go, well, I don't want that. Well, I didn't say what we paid for it yet. Okay, so these are loans that are bought at inordinate discounts. And so there's still a play there with reperforming notes. And I still have people that want to flip notes for income. I set up the note system for home investors, right? I bought my first notes from Ken D'Angelo in about 1987. He and his brother John, still the guy that you see on TV here in Dallas-Fort Worth. That's John D'Angelo and his younger brother Paul. Paul actually worked from Home Investors from the time he was 19 years old, up until just a few years ago. I had a significant hand in training Paul. Great guy, love that guy. But they were in the house buying business. So Ken then left John, and they had a house buying business called Rainbow Realty, and then he went and formed Home Investors. And so as I dealt with them, I set up their note system about right in 1992. And what people don't know is that Ken really, really, really struggled to get home investors off the ground. I mean, struggled like as in they didn't make a profit for 7 years. And so for about 5 or 6 of those 7 years, Ken made a living flipping notes to a guy named Eddie Speed. So Ken built his house buying franchise, and what allowed him to have a salary and live to fight another day to go build the business was flipping notes to me. So a lot of people really don't realize you can flip notes. I don't want to teach somebody just to go broker notes no more than I want to teach somebody just to go wholesale houses. But it's definitely a great bolt-on. And so there's some things that we're going to talk about flipping notes. I've told our high-end students, they heard me say this a couple of days ago, one of the biggest, most underserved markets I see in the market today is somebody that's a note flipper. What I started doing in 1980. It's just there's just not a lot of talent doing it, right? Now, you need to learn what these guys know today, right? To go be good at this, you need to go learn what these guys talked about today. And I have a heart for people being able to do that. So the next thing is a turnkey provider. So I don't know that all of us are quite aware of how big rental property is impacting the single family business today. 38% of every single family door is a rental. Okay, we grew 15 million doors in rentals in the last 8 years. 15 million. So a lot of these properties were bought from people that bought turnkeys. And now they have equity in turnkeys, and there's a way that they could offer seller financing with them. In fact, one of the guys that was here this weekend is Dr. David Phelps. Well, let me just tell you something. Phelps has a super impressive network of dentists that he trains around the country. I think they funded like $88 million last year to CG providers. So these guys have a lot of money, but they have bought a lot of turnkeys. And now as the market's kind of changing and maybe we're more at the top of the real estate value, then I teach you some creative finance strategies to work with turnkeys, to offer seller financing on turnkeys. And there's some really cool stuff. It's it just takes some time to unpack it. In fact, that we generally don't teach that, Joe, until the last day, right? Because we're going to show you so much different financial modeling that it'll make more sense if we just slow it down a little bit. The next thing is buying and holding notes. And I say buying and holding notes in a self-directed retirement account, but that's not really exclusively true. So Ben is going to show students at a class an impressive model. So Ben Hott works with us at Note School on a full-time basis, and he has the most impressive part-time job you've ever seen. And these Note School members know it. Ben is crushing it. And what he does is he deals with a bunch of doctors. And he basically runs a bank for the doctors. And, and I say crushing it. You may not think it's that much. Ben says he works about 10 hours a week at it, and his income's about $30,000 a month. So you may not think that's crushing it. I don't know. But it's totally legit, and he totally does it, and it's pretty cool. And Ben is, if you know Ben well, he's just the quietest guy in the world. He's unassuming. And but we teach that as well as what my wife Martha does. So my wife Martha buys the whole stream of payments. 20 years of a note, sells about half of it, recovers her money, and she owns the backside of the note in some kind of a legacy account or some kind of a retirement account that we have with essentially no money invested. That's kind of how it works. And we call that the Martha model, although we've got hundreds and hundreds of students that have done it. So we have a little fun with that. The best way to teach this is case studies. So we have lots and lots of case studies. This is kind of how we unpack it. And the next thing is how to buy property on seller financing. And as you guys hopefully by now have already figured out, I have a passion for this. I think I can really help a small operator to a giant operator to do it. And a lot of these Note School guys, I tell them, you don't need to be in the house buying business. You just need to be a deal architect. There's tons of people in your city in the house buying business. They're blowing leads right and left. Didn't Brandon kind of make that clear today? I mean, I'm just telling you, I'm not over-exaggerating. These house buyers are in a squeeze, and they got to reinvent themselves. And so this is an excellent way that a lot of people could get involved and do it. And you can do it on various properties from free and clear to part debt to way too much debt and all the above. I change the case studies out when I show this. That's the first one. That's the first time I'd ever done that case study today. Seth has different ones, Brandon different. I mean, they all got different ways of doing it. So this is basically what we teach. And so if you kind of think of with these product types, what's the next thing? And it's people like, everybody goes, give me the 3 steps, give me the 4 steps. So first of all, it's marketing. I have a very big heart to show you marketing. So I'll give you one simple example. Anybody know anybody in the room that's offered seller financing? Anybody in the room either done seller financing or know somebody in the room that offers seller financing? Basically everybody in the room, right? So when they run their ad, what do they say? So if you were going to run an ad with you guys, you mentor students can't answer this. Don't answer that. Don't start. So if you're going to run an ad with seller financing, what would your ad say? Owner financing. Okay? Any other ideas? No banks needed. Must sell. I don't know that really tells me seller financing. What is it? Payment is less than rent. Okay? So give me a phrase, give me an idea of how that ad would read. Yeah, but how would the ad read? Owner financing, payment is monthly payment less than rent. Is that what you're saying? No credit? 0 credit. Yeah. Well, Mr. Watson's going to talk to you about that option. Because Washington, D.C. is on your can about that. That's going to be a problem going forward. The lobby efforts, we just know what they're stirred up about. They're stirred up about lease options, right? So let me just make a suggestion to all you guys. This is what you've been taught. You have copied somebody that has done seller financing in front of you, right? Nobody thought of that, right, Brandon? Nobody in this room thought of that ad. That ad was developed by somebody else that you copied. You know, most things in real estate is a copycat system. So somewhere, some way, you've seen somebody do it and they copied you. And so this is the single thing that I would say that I love the industry clearly. I love the people in the industry. I love people that I've learned my life through learning about this industry through. But there's one thing that I think I get on this better than anybody. And the only reason is because I'm the guy that's looked at 300,000 or 400,000 seller finance transactions. I've been doing it 40 years, right? I bought 40,000 notes. Lord knows I must have looked at 10 times that many. And I've watched this over and over and over and over. I've seen the people that did it right, and I've seen the people that did it wrong. And I discovered that most people run an ad for seller financing holding up a neon sign saying, I'm looking for unqualified buyers. And that don't sound like a guy that's going to pay your bank back for 20 years. So I figured out that if you even put seller financing in your ad, you were basically to the customer advertising for substandard buyers, because that seller financing translates to them to what? Non-qualifying loan, right? So if you got your pencil, write this down, because I've been working on this for about 40 years. Private financing to deserving buyers with large down payment. Private financing to deserving buyers with large down payment. And if there's any single thing that would move the dial in your business this week, you try it. You can't believe the difference in the calls you'll get. Because if you advertise for a bum, they will show up. Large down payment. Yes, ma'am. I used to say significant, but that's multisyllable. That's a joke. You could laugh. Private financing for deserving buyers with large down payment. So I have a lot to say about marketing, because what's my heart for you? My heart for you is to have inexpensive capital to fund your business, marketing to that. My goal for you is to be able to find a superior property. And if you have a superior property, you can advertise for a superior buyer. And then you're able to create a long-term income for your bank. Does this make sense? This is the core of what I want the note business to be. The second thing is how to price it. So yeah. What's a note worth? So the best way to do that is just to bust out a bunch of case studies and to show you what notes trade for and why they trade for it and why some notes trade at 8 and some notes trade at 13 and so forth and so on. And like to give people a sense of how pricing works in various ways and different veins that we're going to work in. And then the next thing is what our business really is. People ask me, they say, give me your elevator speech of what note school is. And I say financial modeling. That's what we teach. We teach financial modeling. We're pretty dang good at turning a deal upside down and figuring out various ways to structure financing around a deal that will produce income today and cash flow tomorrow. We're pretty dang good at it. We've been doing it a long time. We've seen about every way out there. I love it. I've spent my life kind of learning how to do it, so it makes sense. The next thing is the closing process, and the closing process is basically how you're going to put the money together and how you're going to structure the deal and how you're going to find what we call the penalty box buyer and all that stuff. So it's kind of like wrapping the ribbon around. And once again, we like teaching case studies because that's a great way to teach. And Joe and I show up for a class and we got 8 days worth of training. Anytime we roll up on Friday morning, we're not going to run out of something to teach. And so we just kind of adjust it depending on the audience. That's another thing about Note School is not a skit. It's not like the regular seminar thing. You go there in 3 days and at 10:15 on Friday morning, he's going to tell the same joke every time and all that. You've all seen all that stuff. That's not what we're doing. So we really focus on what the sides of the business. And if you kind of look at it, we kind of separate the business into two towers. One is what we call a finance architect, which is flipping loans, a master broker, selling with seller financing, and kind of retirement and wealth building. And the other side, it could be distressed notes, and obviously a big emphasis, and that can lead into either reperforming notes, NPLs to REO, to flip for cash flow, and then the last thing would be this buying on terms. So we're going to basically, we have every class that we do. You come to Atlanta, I'll promise you there's going to be TV stars there. So flip or flop people are going to wear their baseball cap and their sunglasses, and they'll be sitting right up in there like you. So we got a lot of ninjas that's going to show up, and we got a lot of people that show up that aren't. And I'll tell you one thing, Joe and I have worked really hard at our teaching style to make sure that everybody in the room leaves satisfied. I'm very confident that that's the case. We're not going to shoot so far over your. You want to know why we really can do it? Because Brandon will tell you in a minute that as smart as they are about buying houses, that doesn't mean that they're great on buying on terms. And so the people that kind of think they really know creative financing, I've overtaught before, and I've had to back up because I had nothing but a bunch of ninjas in the room. And I figured out that really if I slow it down, I can make everybody understand it, and I don't get anybody bored. And we just have worked hard at doing it. It's difficult teaching that. I'm not going to say it isn't, but we've worked at it. So we really teach 6 niches in notes, right? We teach buying on terms. We teach reperforming notes. We teach non-performing loans. We teach mom and pop seller financing and various opportunities there. We teach real estate investor seller financing, the professional seller that does it over and over and over. And then the last thing is we have turnkey seller financing. So we don't spend equal amount of time in these, but I will tell you this. By Sunday, I can get you to where we can do a case study and show you 4 different applications on one deal. Now, you can't do that on Friday. I've tried it before, trust me, right? But by Sunday, we can get you to where we can take these things and all the things that have kind of been something you've heard about, and I think we'll give you practical application with it. My heart is to whether you do this super part-time or super full-time, is that this note business is good to you. Yeah, I understand making transactional income today, but I want to give you a little bit of what I learned from Mr. Shoemake, my father-in-law, Martha's dad. I want to give you a little bit of what was embedded into my brain 40 years ago, and that is what really is long-term wealth. And I'm just telling you, Martha's right. Martha's right. You get this wealth thing going, and you can live through cycles and live through markets, and you don't have to change your lifestyle, and you don't have to go make decisions to reposition your business because you got to check every month. Mr. Shoemake used to tell me, Eddie, when your living is made on January 1st every year for the next year, then you can really go make a lot of money. You understand what he was saying? When you had enough money coming in the mailbox that you knew was coming in the next 12 months, you didn't have to go chase your living, then you could go chase your wealth, right? And this is what I want to kind of explore and really be able to talk about with you guys. So we're going to talk about these variables a lot. These are the variables that allow you to make a decision on a loan, right? This is pretty much, there's three thought processes. The guy that owes the money, will he pay? What's the likelihood he'll pay, and can you predict it? We're going to talk about the loan and how it's structured. How much are you going to be paid, and how for long are you going to be paid? And then the last thing is we're going to talk about is what the industry would call the collateral. And the collateral can be the house, or the collateral can be the paperwork. So we'll talk a lot about those. I think those are the key components of due diligence and underwriting. Whether you're buying somebody else's note or you're buying our note, it doesn't really make any difference. Now, you want to know where you're going to be You want to know where you're going to be as you progress in the class? You're going to say, to really enjoy this business, I got to have three things. I got to have the knowledge, I got to have the desire to want to go do it, and I got to have the time, the scalability to go do it. I'll bet you my best pair of Texas cowboy boots, by Sunday evening, you got the desire. You bet that's true, Larry? I promise. I mean, if that doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet, okay? Because we're going to show you a lot of financial modeling that you're going to go, I would do that. Plug my name in that blank, right? We're going to show that. But then let me just tell you the truth. You're going to have a minimum standard of this whole, all three of these towers, and part of it is learning how to be able to have enough knowledge and be able to manage your time well. So we're going to talk, believe it or not, as much about how you manage your time and what that looks like is how you manage your knowledge. These guys sitting over here will assure you we can overwhelm you with information. We've been doing this a long dadgum time. We don't lack information. But scaling that information where you can really go use it and pick out target things that are like make sense things to do, that's really the art of doing the business. Impressing you that we can give you information, they will assure you we can give you a library, and if you started tomorrow morning, we could work you about 50 hours a week for the next 2 years, no problem. But we got a big library of information, but scaling that information to the right punchline makes sense. What I want you to do is to get the punchline. Last thing I'm going to say about this before we talk about the class is that most people that are carrying a card in this room say that they're an active investor. Well, let me just tell you something. If you're active on every deal you do, you just run out of capacity. And if you got to go rework every deal you've already made somewhere in the future, then you're not an active, you have an active investment, and what I want you to have is a passive investment. So I want you to go from an active, creative mind to a long-term passive asset. And so we're going to talk a lot about what that really means and how it works. So here's the reasons that the people do the note business, right? They do it for these reasons, and we'll figure this out. Nobody's going to do it for one reason, but you're going to probably pick 6 or 8 of those. We're going to talk about different kinds of notes. We'll talk about seller financing, bank-originated notes. In the seller finance space, we're going to talk about 3 areas: mom and pop, real estate investor, and buying on terms. Very, very different what you're negotiating for depending on which seat you're sitting in. So buying on terms, our job is to make as cheap a note as we can, and seller financing on the backside is to make the most valuable note that we can, right? So you've got to know what you're negotiating for and why. On the origination side, we'll talk about reperforming as well as the non-performing space, and we are going to spend most of our time with this concept, how to be a deal architect. Financial modeling. So we're going to show you a lot of examples. You're going to see what others don't see, do what others don't do, and basically react when others don't. I believe the modern day real estate investor today, most of them need to make a fairly significant change in their business. I think most of the ninjas that you saw on stage today believe that, right? I mean, listen, you had a guy on stage today that trains all 500 of the top 500 real estate investors in the business. John Martinez, I mean, I don't know what you call, they don't come to more legitimate than that. Like Brandon, he is like, nobody has his vantage point. And these guys believe that they need to make an adjustment to their business. That is an opportunity. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to act on it in different ways. So we have a 3-day class. People say, why don't you just put it all online? Because you cannot be creative like we can be creative with just some online training. It's just not possible. So we are going to stretch the rubber band with you about as tight as we can stretch it every day. We're going to show you various models, various strategies. Our job is to not frustrate you, but we're going to take you as far as we can take you to make sure that you're seeing what's possible. And it takes about 3 days to do it. So we have a 3-day live class. I want you to bring a business partner or a family member. My father-in-law got me in this business. His partner is sitting right here in this room. I started with him 40 years ago, Mr. Ed Langton. Say hi to him, Ed. True story, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So I have a heart for family in this business, and I got my dad in this business at 68 years old. My dad told me 1,000 times before he died he loved this more than anything he'd ever done. So the truth of the matter is, I want you to bring a family member or a business partner. Now, be honest and be fair with me. Don't bring some guy that you partnered up in the room that you don't really own a business with and you don't have a common checking account. That's not being fair to us. But if you have a second person, I want you to bring them. So bring them to the class, and then obviously that's at a $2,000 class. So I want to give you 2 action items, okay? I'm going to give you 2 action items today, because the truth of the matter is there is something to people that will act. The people that can't make a decision, to be honest with you, they're not the greatest people to train. So I want to motivate the most likely personality type to train, which is somebody that'll pull the trigger. So I want to give you some bonuses today, and I'm going to give you a flash sale price. Right? So I'm going to give you a discount. I really don't do that. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. We really don't do that. But I want to do it today. You guys came to NoteExpo. I'm going to sort of give you a benefit of some of your ticket that you did, and you hung out with me here to do this. So if it makes sense, if it doesn't and you're not ready to make a decision, no issue. But I want to reward the people that can make a decision to do it. You don't have to pick the date. Okay? So you're buying a class. I'm going to put some dates on the board. If your sister is getting married at every one of the next dates up there and you can't come, it's okay. We'll get you scheduled to come to a class. All right? You think, I've heard these objections before. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to give you some extra bonuses. So this is a really good course that I used to teach live, and it is a course essentially on buying seller finance notes. And it is about, I think it's 14 modules, so it's really a good extensive course, but it's better home study material, right? It's more foundational material, so obviously it'll be digital and you can access it over and over and over. The second thing is I have developed some really good get started guides for buying on terms. This one is called How to Get the Property Seller to the Yes. And it's just a little get started guide, but it's a quick read, but it's a good read. It's a solid piece of information. The next Get Started Guide is 5 steps to dictating the terms to your lender, because I have learned that we were all learned to borrow money from the people that were lending us money. And I have to make you think differently, because now you are telling your lender what you're willing to do, right? They don't know what the rules are. You're telling them the rules. So this is a thought process. So this Get Started Guide will really help you with that process. I'm going to give you a really cool little software. It's still in the test stages, and when we get to final stage, I'm going to give you that too, and it's called Note Architect. And so I can run a financial calculator pretty quick and pretty fast, but I can't do it near as fast as this software can do it. So it'll let you run first and seconds and zero interest and stepped interest and deferred interest, and then payment start at a later date, and all the cool stuff that we're going to talk about. So when you come to the class, the use of this software will make a lot of sense to you as what's possible. And then I'm going to give you a home study course on buying on terms. It's called the Nothing Down Deal Architect. So this is not a long read, but it's a good read. This is 5 modules of training. The guy that's doing this training with me lent money on about 15,000 houses to real estate investors. About half or 3/4 of those houses were turnkey houses, so he is extremely knowledgeable in understanding a real estate investor and the process. And we're basically teaching you the process of buying on terms. I mentioned in the presentation this morning, it's about 50 terms that you could negotiate. Well, what are those 50 terms? And what could that negotiation look like? So this is better home study course than it is live, and it really talks about what those things are. And that's going to be a $14.97 bonus. So just to recap, and I'm not going to go through them individually, but if we tallied them up and things that we would sell individually, it's $8,097, including the course. And we have the courses across the United States. Now, don't look at a star and say, oh, I'm going to wait till it comes to Salt Lake City, because just because we had a class in Salt Lake doesn't mean we're going to have one in the next 12 months or whatever. So, but we do have about 1/3 of them West Coast, about 1/3 of them in the center part of the country, and about 1/3 of them on the East Coast. So We do about 20 classes a year, so we usually can find a date and a location that will fit somebody. They are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'll tell you something else. People actually really do learn more when they come to a class that's not in their town, right? Now, that may not be exactly what it winds up being for you, but I will tell you this. If you come to a class, what I found, if you fly in, you are laser focused on that class for 3 days. If you come to where it's in your town with all of a sudden the distractions, it doesn't seem to be able to let people be as focused. So here are the next dates for the class. And it's Atlanta coming up in a couple of weeks, Milwaukee and Birmingham. I know that we're probably going to have a class in Dallas around the middle of January, and we'll push those dates out soon enough. But we're going to have plenty of dates and locations that'll fit you. So, once again, I can't promise you it'll be in your hometown, but I'll promise you that it'll be some date and some location that would obviously fit. So, just to kind of recap, you've got the software and the home study course, the 3-day class, 2 tickets to it, another home study book. And so I told Susan, y'all know how long Susan's been with me? Susan's been with me 26 years, Ed. Can you believe that? 26 years. So, Susan lives with all of my decisions that I make, right? She's the marshal, right? So I told Susan, I said, Susan, we're going to have a flash sale today, and that's supposed to be $9.97. So that's just a sizing thing. I'm just telling you that's really what that is. It's an Apple versus a PC thing. It really is $9.97. But I'll tell you what, if this is a fit for today, right? This is a fit today. I want to make sure you get the bonuses, and it's going to be $6.97, right? And I'm going to do something I never do, and I really am not kidding. I never do this. You show up at the end of day 3 in a class, and if we didn't fulfill everything I promised you, I'll promise you, I'll give you my word, I'll send you the money back, and you can keep the bonuses. So I'm trying to take the risk out of it for you. And that's not how we normally do it. And I know that. But I believe in it. And I believe that I would tell you the satisfaction rate of people that come through a class is virtually 100%. And so I'm excited to see that would be something you do. So everybody's going to get a book. And I want you to read this book. I'm really kind of proud of this. It was written as an ebook. It's about 50 pages. But it's a good read. And it talks about creative financing and kind of makes you think about different ways of creative financing. So it shouldn't take you long, but it would definitely help you with the process. And that's just thank you for coming and hanging out with us today. And that's what it is. Let's talk about the morning just for a second. So tomorrow morning we have the Note Pro Mastermind. It'll be just about an hour and a half, and we'll start at 9. And basically these guys that are members, we have a little process that we're going to go through with them, and you're just going to get a sense of what we do. And the thing that I really like that we're going to do tomorrow morning is they're going to talk about where they're at in their business. They'll tell a little background about who they are and where they're at in their business. They're going to talk about things that they did last year and things that they maybe came to the mastermind with a thought process, and maybe at the mastermind changed their mind. Because the point of a mastermind is a brain trust, right? If you come to a mastermind and you don't change anything about your business, you either didn't ask the right questions or we didn't give the right brain trust back to you, right? And so because I know there's a lot of situations that people have been able to reanalyze that. And we'll talk about that in the morning, and I'll give a little bit more of a vision about the market and where I see things going and why we're kind of going in the direction that we are. So maybe an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes tomorrow morning. Just you can come by and hang out with us. We start at 9. Y'all do remember it's daylight savings times. Everybody know that? Daylight savings time. So you're going to gain an hour. Your iPhone will know it, but just make sure if you don't otherwise know it that you set your clock right. And if you knew me well, you know what I would say at this point, Larry? I'm out of soap. Thank you. I end all of our training calls with "I'm out of soap." I learned that from David Fenolio. See, I just keep learning. Thank you, everybody. I really thank you for coming. We really enjoyed having you.